A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to the Pharisees, "There was a rich man who dressed in purple garments and fine linen, and dined sumptuously every day. And lying at his door was a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who would gladly have eaten his fill of the scraps that fell from the rich man's table. Dogs even used to come and lick his sores. When the poor man died, he was carried away by angels to the bosom of Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried, and from the netherworld, where he was in torment, he raised his eyes and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side. And he cried out, 'Father Abraham, have pity on me. Send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am suffering torment in these flames.' Abraham replied, 'My child, remember that you received what was good during your lifetime, while Lazarus likewise received what was bad. But now he is comforted here, whereas you are tormented. Moreover, between us and you a great chasm is established to prevent anyone from crossing who might wish to go from our side to yours, or from your side to ours.' He said, 'Then I beg you, Father, send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, so that he may warn them, lest they too come to this place of torment.' But Abraham replied, 'They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them.' He said, 'Oh no, Father Abraham, but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent.' Then Abraham said, 'If they will not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded if someone should rise from the dead.'" The Gospel of the Lord. A few weeks ago, I happened to read a review of a book that just came out, and the book had the very short, intriguing title, "The Bet." And as the title suggests, it was about a bet, a wager that happened between 2 men back in 1980. Now, one of the men making the bet was named Paul Ehrlich. And you may remember or may not remember that back in the 1960s and 1970s, Paul Ehrlich was a famous biologist. He studied the field of entomology. And he took the common observation about insects, the observation that, for instance, if a group of locusts came across a big food supply, such as a cornfield or a field of wheat, they would do 2 things. They would multiply and they would devour the food supply. And then at some point there would be a lot of locusts and no food left, and then they would die off by the thousands. And Ehrlich took that observation and he applied it to people. He saw that the world's population was increasing, and in 1968 he wrote a book that was entitled "The Population Bomb." And in the book he postulated that within the next 20 years there would be too many people and not enough food. And then there would be food shortages and panics and maybe even mass starvation. And Ehrlich was not only a biologist, he was a celebrity. So he went around promoting his book and his ideas on television shows. He appeared on The Tonight Show a number of times. And always his solution was the same: population control, less people. Now, the other man making the bet was named Julian Simon. Now, unlike Ehrlich, Julian Simon wasn't a biologist. He was an economist. He studied the behavior of people and the use of their resources, which was economics. And when he thought about Ehrlich, he decided Ehrlich was wrong. And the reason was that people were so fundamentally different than insects. To begin with, people had intellect. They had reasoning. And they could anticipate shortages, and then they could create, and they could innovate, and they could alleviate those shortages, and maybe they wouldn't even happen. And secondly, people had free will. And so they weren't captive to their desires and their instincts. They could rise above those, and through some invisible force, often they did so. They chose, rather than follow their instincts, to help others, to come to the aid even of strangers. And thirdly, human beings were social. Not in the social sense of insects, where there was predestination. You were either a worker bee or a drone or a queen bee from birth. But each individual person can go out and find their particular area of interest, their particular niche, where they can contribute to a group. And so in 1981, Julian Simon wrote a book of his own, and it was entitled The Ultimate Resource. And the ultimate resource that he wrote about was us, each of us individually and all of us together. But unlike Ehrlich, Simon wasn't a celebrity. He had no way of promoting his ideas. And so he thought, and he decided the best way to promote his ideas was to write to Ehrlich. And basically he said, you think there are going to be all these shortages in 10 years, and I don't think that that's going to happen. And I will bet you $1,000 that the commodities that you think we're going to run out of in 10 years are going to be more plentiful. And if they're more plentiful and the price goes down, I win the bet. And if they're less plentiful and they're more expensive, you win the bet. And Ehrlich accepted the bet, and it was called the Ehrlich-Simon wager. And of course, over the next 10 years, people innovated. They created. And there were still some food shortages here and there, usually due to natural disasters or to war. But by and large, the food supply of the world went from scarcity to plenitude. And when it was obvious that Simon was going to win the bet, he became sort of a celebrity. And he went to the White House in the 1980s, and he presented his ideas to President Ronald Reagan. And then in 1989, this Jewish economist, Julian Simon, made an extraordinary journey. He went to Vatican City, and he presented his ideas to Pope John Paul II. And 2 years later, in 1991, the Pope published his encyclical Centesimus Annus. And in the encyclical, he wrote, besides the earth, man's principal resource is man himself. His intelligence enables him to discover the earth's productive potential and the many different ways in which the human needs can be satisfied. It is his disciplined work in close collaboration with others that makes possible the creation of ever more extensive working communities which can be relied upon to transform man's natural and human environments. Now, today in our gospel, Christ tells us the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. And he warns us about the allurements of the comforts and the pleasures of this life. And he tells us, look, if you allow yourself to be drawn into them, they'll consume you. And then a chasm will open between you and your eternal reward. Now, I remember when I was young and I heard the parable, I really didn't think it concerned me directly. He was talking about somebody else. I wasn't dirt poor like Lazarus, but I didn't consider myself to be wealthy either. But then when I came of age and I thought about things, and I thought about the ultimate resource in the words of the Holy Father, it occurred to me, of course, Christ is telling those who have been given great material wealth, yes, you must use that wealth to the benefit of those in need rather than for your own pleasure. And woe to you if you don't. But also, through the parable, God speaks to each of us. And He tells us, regardless of how much or how little material wealth you've been given in life, I have given you a gift that is beyond all treasure. I have made you in my own image. And I, the all-knowing God, have given you the gift of your minds so that you may know the needs of others, and through your creativity in my image, you will be able to meet their needs. And I, the God who does all that He wills, give you the gift of your freedom. And I, the all-holy God, through my church, I give you the gift of grace, so that through your free will and with my grace, you may rise above all my other creatures. Rise above your impulses, your instincts, your desires, and go forth to meet the needs of friend and stranger alike. And I, the all-loving God, give you the gift of love, so that no matter how small the deed you do for others, it can be given with love, and it will become great. And I, the God who you know in three divine persons, I give you the gift of society, so that what you cannot do alone, you may be able to do together. And so each of us should think of ourselves in that image, the ultimate resource. And as we go forth to serve others, to serve the needy in the image of our Maker, we will rise above the image of the rich man in this life, and we will rise above his fate in the next.